In the dying heat of the Arizona Territory, a broken town named Oakhaven was starving, not for food, but for hope. 15 years after a brutal outlaw siege left its people shattered, the land still carried the scars, and so did the son of the man who died defending it. But when 17-year-old Daniel Thorne rode into that fading town and found a girl boiling nothing but water to feed her little brothers, he made a choice that would change the fate of Oakhaven forever. Watch till the end, partner, because what Daniel built from that moment didn't just save a starving town, it forged the greatest cattle empire the territory had ever seen. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and if these Western tales make your day a little better, subscribe now, partner. Your support keeps them coming.
The air in the Arizona Territory hung thick with the dust of resentment and the scent of sun-baked earth. The year was 1888. A town called Oakhaven, nestled in a desolate valley, was still nursing wounds inflicted years ago. It was a place where suspicion ran deeper than the nearby Whisper Creek, and every creak of a wagon wheel could be mistaken for the approach of danger. 15 years earlier, Oakhaven had been a vibrant, if isolated community. Its lifeblood was the surrounding ranch land. The largest of these belonged to Marcus the Bull Thorne, a man whose reputation was as vast and unforgiving as his spread. Marcus wasn't a benevolent figure. He was driven by a rugged sense of self-reliance and an almost religious devotion to his land. He had carved his fortune out of the unforgiving landscape, often at the expense of others, including the local Pinnacle tribe, whose ancient hunting grounds now bore his brand. The relative peace was shattered by the infamous bandit king of the Barrens, a figure known only as Silas. Silas and his gang, the Coyote Pack, descended on Oakhaven, not for land or justice, but for the rumored cache of gold being stored in the town's newly built bank vault. Their attack was swift, brutal, and utterly without mercy. The townsfolk, however, were not sheep. Driven by the desperate will to protect their hard-won lives and meager possessions, they rallied. The plan, hatched in the shadows of the saloon and the general store, was simple. Defense by attrition, using the town's narrow streets and stone buildings as natural fortifications. Marcus Thorne, the rancher, initially stood apart. His family and his fortune were safe on his heavily defended ranch, miles from the immediate conflict. He watched the messengers ride past, his massive hands tightening on his saddle horn. His wife, a sharp-eyed woman named Josie, saw the internal struggle reflected in his stormy gaze. "They helped you, Marcus," she stated, her voice quiet but firm, cutting through the ranch's silence. "When the typhoid nearly took Daniel, and when the drought killed half your first herd, they didn't ask for a penny when they brought us supplies. They just helped." Marcus spat into the dust. "Sentiment won't win a gunfight, Josie. My duty is here, protecting what's mine. And what of your soul?" Josie countered, stepping closer. "If Oakhaven falls and you stood by simply because you could afford to, do you think you'll ever sit easy in this house again? You'll be a rich man, Marcus, but you'll be a hollow one." Her words were a bullet to his pride. Marcus Thorne was many things, but a coward or a man who couldn't face his own reflection wasn't one of them. He knew the guilt would be a slow, agonizing poison, a shadow that would darken his remaining days. With a grim finality, he turned to Josie. His voice was low, heavy with the premonition of death. "If I don't ride back, Josie, Daniel, he's 12 now, a boy, but he's got a good heart. When he comes of age, tell him everything. Tell him to watch over them, the town, the people. It's a debt I'm paying, not just for the help they gave me, but for the land I took. Tell him to be a better man than his father was." He kissed her, a rough, desperate gesture, and rode out, disappearing into the blood-red Arizona sunset toward the besieged town. The battle for Oakhaven was a massacre. Townspeople fought with farm tools, old hunting rifles, and sheer bloody desperation. Marcus Thorne, a powerhouse of rage and size, fought like a demon, his shotgun booming a rhythm of defiance. By dawn, the Coyote Pack was broken. Silas and the remnants of his gang fled, leaving a trail of dead and wounded behind. But the victory was a costly one. Nearly a third of the town's fighting men were dead, and Marcus Thorne lay among them, a bullet hole precisely in the center of his chest. Time, the only true healer in the West, passed slowly over Oakhaven. 5 years crawled by. The scars on the buildings remained, and the grief was a palpable thing. Daniel Thorne was 17 now. The boy was gone, replaced by a young man hardened by ranch life, and burdened by a legacy he didn't ask for. His mother, Josie, had died 2 years prior, a quiet fading after years of grief. On her deathbed, she had fulfilled her promise. Your father, he wasn't a hero, Daniel. He was a flawed man who made a right choice too late. The gold in the bank wasn't the town's, it was a payment for my uncle's land that he took. He helped them because he was trying to buy back his soul. You have to do better. You have to honor his last intention, not his life. The truth was a bitter pill, but it settled in Daniel's gut like a stone driving him. He took the reins of the Thorne Ranch, now called Redemption Ridge, but the land felt empty. One crisp autumn morning, Daniel rode into Oakhaven. The town was decaying, its commerce stalled. People looked like ghosts, their faces etched with chronic worry. As he rode past the edge of the residential district, he passed a small, dilapidated cabin, one that looked barely fit to keep out the wind. He heard a low, sorrowful sound, a mixture of a sob and a child's stifled cry. He dismounted, tying his horse, Dusk, to a weathered post. Peering through a dusty pane of glass, he saw the cabin's interior. A young woman, no older than 16, stood over a small, sputtering fireplace. Her name was Rosaline Rose Vega. She was trying to appear busy, stirring a pot that hung over the weak flame. 2 younger boys, perhaps 7 and 9, sat on a threadbare rug, their eyes wide with hunger and hope. Almost ready, boys, Rose murmured, forcing a thin smile. The broth is just thickening. Daniel's keen rancher's eyes saw the truth instantly. The pot held nothing but boiling water, maybe a pinch of salt if they were lucky. The broth was a lie, a desperate, loving deception to soothe the gnawing hunger pangs until the boys finally fell asleep. The sight hit Daniel with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just poverty. It was utter, soul-crushing despair. He moved from that house, passing several others, seeing similar vignettes. A man trying to mend a shoe with no leather, a woman shivering under a blanket in the early morning chill. The spirit of Oakhaven was not just wounded, it was starved. Daniel rode back to Redemption Ridge, the image of Rose's desperate lies searing his mind. His father's words, his mother's plea, echoed in his ears. You have to honor his last intention. He sat in the great house, which now felt too big, too opulent. His fortune was immense, his cattle numbered in the thousands, but the entire town his father had died for was dying slowly of neglect a few miles away. Charity, he knew, would be an insult. It would only deepen the sense of failure and dependence. He called for Jedediah, his most trusted foreman, a tall, quiet man of mixed heritage, who understood the unforgiving nature of the frontier better than anyone. Jedediah, Daniel began, his voice firm, the last vestige of the boy stripped away. Go to Oakhaven. Find the cabin on the edge of town, the one near the old oak stump. Bring the girl there, Rosaline Vega, to me. Tell her it's urgent. Tell her Daniel Thorne needs to speak with her. Jedediah, sensing the change in his young boss, simply nodded and rode out. Rose arrived at Redemption Ridge an hour later, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was wary, guarded, and fiercely protective. She expected a demand, perhaps a threat regarding the meager resources she'd sometimes forage on the edge of the Thorne lands. Daniel met her in the expansive shadowed library, a room filled with books his father never read. He dismissed the servants, leaving the two of them alone. Rose stood stiffly, her worn dress contrasting sharply with the room's rich furnishings. She was small, but her eyes, though exhausted, held a spark of defiant intelligence. "Miss Vega," Daniel began, stepping from the shadows to reveal his 17-year-old self, tall, lean, and possessing his father's compelling gravity. "I saw you this morning." Rose's face flushed a deep crimson. "I don't know what you mean, Mr. Thorne." "The water in the pot," he stated gently, not as an accusation, but as a statement of painful fact. "You were pretending to make broth for those two boys." "Your brothers?" She stared at the floor, unable to maintain her fierce composure. "They are my responsibility, not yours. My father died in the fight for Oakhaven," Daniel said, walking toward her, his voice softening with conviction. "He wasn't a good man, Miss Vega. He was a hard man. But in the end, he did right by the town. They helped him when he was struggling. He paid a debt with his life. Now, I have to honor his final request, and that is to watch over your people." Rose finally looked up, her expression a mix of skepticism and raw pain. "We don't need charity, Mr. Thorne. We need jobs. We need a way to feed ourselves that doesn't feel like begging." "Exactly," Daniel said, a slow, genuine smile finally touching his lips. He saw not a pauper but a potential partner, a woman who valued dignity over handouts. "That's why I brought you here. I won't insult you or your neighbors with handouts. I will give you a proposition. I need to expand Redemption Ridge. I need more cattle, better ledgers, and I need people I can trust. People who aren't afraid of work." He gestured around the grand room. "I have the land. I have the resources. Oakhaven has the people. We can combine them. I will offer fair wages, a living wage, and I will start with you." Rose was stunned. "Me?" "Yes, you," Daniel confirmed, leaning against the desk. "You were intelligent enough to keep a desperate lie going to protect those children. You're clearly resourceful. I need someone to manage my books, organize the payroll, and help me with the inventory. You will be my head administrator. I need you to go back to Oakhaven. Don't mention charity. Don't mention my father's debt. Spread the news. Daniel Thorne is hiring anyone who can work, ranch hands, stable boys, cooks, seamstresses, anyone." He paused, his gaze locking with hers. "Those who are too old or too young to work, those who are injured, we will provide for them through the business, a sick and injured fund, a payroll deduction taken from my share, so they feel it's a benefit of the ranch, not a gift. They will feel independent, Rose. They will feel pride, and we, working together, will save that town." Rose felt a dizzying surge of hope and challenge. She saw the unwavering purpose in the young man's eyes, a dedication that transcended his father's gruff self-interest. It was a purpose she desperately needed to believe in. "I'll do it, Mr. Thorne," she breathed, her voice gaining strength. "I'll bring you the workers, but know this, I'll work harder than any man you've ever hired, and I will hold you to your word." "I wouldn't have it any other way, Miss Vega," Daniel replied, offering his hand. The work was brutal, the hours long, but the pay was steady, and the purpose was intoxicating. The people of Oakhaven, revitalized by hope, poured into Redemption Ridge. The ranch, under Daniel's focused progressive leadership, and Rose's meticulous, passionate organization, flourished. Rose proved to be Daniel's indispensable partner. She wasn't just good with ledgers, she had an intuitive grasp of the business. She rode out with him during branding season, handled volatile negotiations with cattle buyers, and her keen ethical mind served as the moral compass Daniel hadn't known he needed. She was his confidant, his critic, and his shadow. She never shirked a duty, never complained, and never allowed Daniel to forget the people who depended on them. 15 years passed in a blur of dust, ambition, and shared sunsets. The Redemption Ridge cattle business grew into an empire, reaching markets as far as the eastern cities. Oakhaven recovered, not as a memorial to a failed defense, but as a thriving, confident hub of commerce. New shops, a proper school, and a strong new stone bank replaced the old, wounded structures. Daniel, now a man of 32, was respected throughout the territory. He had shed his father's aggressive reputation, replacing it with one of integrity and quiet power. He had kept his word, elevating his workers and securing the town. One cool, clear evening, Daniel and Rose, now 27, sat on the porch of the main ranch house, reviewing the week's accounts. The ledger lay forgotten on the table between them. "The profits are staggering, Daniel," Rose said, her voice soft, warmed by the amber light of the lantern. "More than enough to rebuild 3 Oakhavens." "The numbers aren't what matters, Rose," Daniel replied, turning to look at her. Her face, still beautiful, was now marked by the character and wisdom of years of shared struggle. "It's what we built together, a community that stands on its own feet, a debt repaid, and then some." Their hands, which had reached for the ledger at the same moment, now rested on the table, side by side. Their bonding had grown stronger than the ironwood fences they had erected around the property. It was a love born not of youthful infatuation but of mutual respect, shared hardship, and a unified vision of redemption. It was a partnership that had grown so deep and intertwined that neither could recall a time when the other was not the most essential part of their life. Daniel gently took her hand, his thumb tracing the callous strength of her palm. "You were the anchor, Rose. You never let me float away on the tide of my own success. You kept me grounded in the debt, and then you taught me how to turn that debt into true value." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I kept my promise to my father. Now I want to make a new promise. To you." Rose's fierce eyes, the same ones that had lied about the water for her brothers, now softened with a profound understanding. The grit of their shared past, the drama of the town's struggle, and the suspense of their uncertain future had culminated in this quiet, undeniable moment. "You have redeemed the town, Daniel Thorne," she whispered, "and in doing so you redeemed yourself." "Then let's build something more than a business," Daniel said, his heart full. "Let's build a family. Marry me, Rose. Let's make Redemption Ridge everything we both deserve." The lantern flickered, illuminating the golden dust motes in the evening air. Dust motes that no longer carried the scent of resentment, but the promising scent of a future built on love, hard work, and true partnership. Rose smiled, a slow, radiant smile that promised all the happiness the unforgiving West could offer. "Yes, Daniel, I will." They had not only rebuilt a town, they had forged a love as enduring as the Arizona mountains.
If you enjoy our Western stories, consider subscribing. It really helps us keep creating more for you.